reactions. We've seen the numbers. We are bringing it back. We are reacting to Boomer animations once again.
Sleeping Beauty is the first full-length animated feature photographed in what we call Technorama 70. Our previous features like Snow White, Pinocchio, and Cinderella were made for the standard-size theater screen. So they were shot on 35mm film like this. But Sleeping Beauty was filmed in Technorama 70 like this. That meant that all of our artwork, backgrounds, paintings had to be larger and more detailed.
These paintings in real life are huge. At the time, it was the largest film that any American animated feature has ever been on. It's really, really similar to like ATO's aspect ratio, where it's just super long. And all other like past Disney films, the aspect ratio is really condensed. I'm supposed to be looking at all of these scenes and like seeing that the foreground and the very far background have the same amount of like sharpness.
They were aided immeasurably by a very gifted artist named Eyvind Earl, who came up with a very stylized and modern look for the film.
In searching for a style for a cartoon feature, the backgrounds must harmonize with the animated characters, as well as fit the mood of the story and the music. So we did a great amount of research into medieval painting and architecture.
That's why it took us 6 years and $6 million to make Sleeping Beauty.
All the inspirations that they had were done so successfully, and I like the storybook comparison. When you open a storybook, you want to look at every aspect of the illustration, and Sleeping Beauty feels the same.
I have never seen
Julie!
Listen!
Are we gonna do this every video?
I know!
Every video!
I haven't seen this movie yet.
Julie!
I've still yet to watch the full
Wait.
Again, we're doing this again, Julie?
I feel you, because I haven't seen a lot of stuff.
No, okay, because this one, the excuses, like, as a kid, I was too scared to watch it. But
What part scared you?
I remember seeing bits and pieces here, but it was like the dragon, oh my god, Maleficent.
Oh yeah.
Turning into the dragon.
Well, she's supposed to be terrifying.
Yeah, it was scary, like that.
She's from hell.
Snow White also was too scary for me to watch.
Snow White? What was scary about Snow White? I don't
The
remember
old
much
lady, the granny. No, you have no idea how my fear ran deep. We had the VHS copy at home, and I couldn't even look at the VHS like box because she's like in the corner, like. That is kind of one of the reasons why I never seen Sleeping Beauty. But after kind of watching that segment and just realizing how much effort and really creativity and uniqueness that goes into, especially the environment of Sleeping Beauty, brings in another like level of appreciation.
I would love to see like a Baroque version of a film. I feel like with that like much detail and like actual research, like it was same thing with Bambi too, right? Like they actually had a deer like in the studio. And even Ariel, like they had like live models and they were like, wear this, like a whole like wetsuit.
I also want to touch upon what Julie said about like intentionality and why 6 years back then time was allotted for different things than the 6 years we work on a film now. Just on the backgrounds, like all hand painted. I mean, they all were back in the day, right? But for these like incredibly long, horizontal, huge hand painted environments, there's no undo button, there's no save. There is this intentionality that you have to have as a traditional artist.
I feel like now we think of art like that stressfully, but before it was normal to like scrap it and just try again. That one animation sequence that took 6 years, Blue Eye Samurai, there we go. We no longer have time to try again. Like there's plenty of time where it's like, just approve it, whatever, because you know you don't have time or like the budget. Like before it was completely normal to be like, oh, we could just try again.
Rewatch Sleeping Beauty, everybody, and pay attention to the environment at least, because someone worked really, really hard on that. Julie, watch Sleeping Beauty. I will watch it with you. It's my favorite movie of all time.
Yeah, I'm down.
One at a time, each drawing is placed in a holder, and a single exposure is made on film. Upon this new apparatus, actual scenes are constructed to convey the idea of depth and to permit the movement of backgrounds. For instance, many drawings of this bird must be photographed, each one with the wings and other lines of body contour in slightly changed positions. Also, with each exposure, the background is moved.
So I mainly wanted to talk about the prop thing they built, the set.
The moving set, right?
Yeah, the moving set. I've never seen that before because we were looking at the multiplane camera in the previous video, and you know, that was a big change for animation.
We called it the multiplane camera.
Look at that thing. Yeah, this really changed the game. I don't know why I never thought to actually build a little set, little prop, and use that.
Beginning with one sustained picture, note how this series of pictures flashed on the screen up to the rate of 24 per second speeds the action. Finally, the picture goes into the cutting room, where the film is cut into scenes and edited.
I remember watching in another video that was also Popeye by like walking through a cave, and they have a 3D cave set that's built that also moves along with the character to give it like a sense of depth of field. I guess it's kind of similar to like a mix of playing of stop motion and 2D frame by frame animation. As an animator, how can you tell like how much you need to move the set in order for it to feel like a very consecutive motion?
I'm assuming they probably had like stop motion professionals as well to help them out on that one.
That's actually a question that I had. When you're doing traditional animation, you're doing the main poses and then you're doing in between frames. How do you know the motion of the hand, how many frames you need of the arm going from position A to position B, and to make it look natural?
Use time sheets.
And also reference whether it's yourself, like you do the action yourself and kind of time it in your head or have an actual timer, or film it, I guess is what we would do now. But back then you didn't have, you know, a camera. You could just motion the action yourself. It's mostly just your own judgment, measure it with your heart, essentially.
Especially if you're doing like straightforward animation, but like most people do pose by pose animation. So you'll have your A and B pose, then you put like between A and B, you put another A and B, then you play it, see how that looks, then you add as many in-betweens until it looks the way you want it to look.
For like flying and running scenes, we still do the same thing. We just loop a very long background and make it seamless.
But yeah, a lot of it is just making it more cost efficient, so we do it like on the computer and stuff like that.
These huge pieces of machinery that were like in these animation studios, they must have been insured something fierce, because what if you're like sick one morning and you're like dizzy or you're fighting a hangover? Not that you should be drunk coming to work, but you just like crash into one of these machines and it falls and it smashes to a million pieces. Like, what would you do?
Why would you put that image in my head?
A lot of the times, certain things are becoming like more expensive doing it like the digital way than they were in the traditional way. Puppet animation is one of them. Puppet animation came because even just doing frame by frame animation on digital was still expensive. But I do often run into shows that decide they're gonna be puppeted, right? Because it's cheaper, not knowing that like puppet is also very limited. So you end up having to break the puppet over and over and over again, and that becomes like more expensive than just if you had done it frame by frame. Breaking the puppet, for anyone that doesn't understand what that means, is essentially like your puppet is limited in movement, right? Like your arm does this, right? So breaking the puppet means that you would have to go into the rig, draw the actual thing, and not just like move the asset. So sometimes that's how it can get more expensive than if you just drew it.
To make my Tauntaun move, a miniature of her with a model of me aboard had to be created. That was then photographed one frame at a time through a process known as stop motion photography. The adjustments between frames of all the tiny moving parts are minuscule. They're actually models which can be carried in the palm of your hand. They were filmed against background paintings and snowscapes months later. The animators shot motion studies of animals in order to perfect the movements of their models.
I think again, like actually having references, they got an elephant, they're like, walk forward, come here.
That's insane. Where did they get that elephant? Did they like just get it from the zoo? Did they rent it out? Was there a system to rent an elephant?
Animals did not have a lot of rights back in the day.
Yeah, I would say the rules were probably different then.
Like, there are so many like things that we encounter in our mundane, ordinary day-to-day lives that if we take influence from them and we like apply it to like our own art, it can make it believable. It can make it move naturally.
That's why I'm like a big advocate for learning the basics.
Use references. It's not the devil. I don't know when that became a thing where like people were starting to say that like using references was like cheating.
It was when the whole tracing digital art controversy or debate really happened. You're cheating because you're tracing things, and it's like, oh my god, how else do you think we're gonna learn?
There's nothing wrong if like you took a picture of yourself and you traced it. Like,
exactly.
Get in the habit of taking your own photo references.
We are gifted the technology of a camera. Like, if you guys are trying to make a realistic pose, you can actually just film yourself doing whatever action. I mean, I don't know if you can do a backflip. If you can't, you know, it sucks to suck. Don't just like pretend that you're walking and take a picture. Like, actual walk and then just freeze it, the frame, and it'll look so much more believable too. The walking sequence going up the hill from Jungle Book and the one from Winnie the Pooh is the same one.
They reuse all those things, and character designs have really similar silhouettes. It's because back then Disney and other studios had to save money too.
Also, like, there's nothing wrong with reuses. Like, again, reference real life.
Another thing I like seeing in the Star Wars video was you see all these people that have like different specialties. You have like people who don't work in animation at all, but they're just like engineers, they're mechanics. You have like so many different people working on one thing and it's so beautiful. I want to work in stop motion.
So now I've got my keyframes here, one on the ground, one in the air, one on the ground again. And as I flip through the drawings, you can see that's basically the movement it gives you. So I can tweak the in-betweens using this, which is a spline editor. And these are my keyframes here on the ground, in the air, and on the ground. And I can pull this so that as it hops up in the air, it will hug that top keyframe and then come back down again. And then if I wanted it to now travel across the room as it hops, I can place extremes here. You create a movement across the room. So you just keep layering stuff. So by the end, I'll just have numbers all across the screen. And with a character like Woody, we always describe it as a marionette. And as the character's built, you attach strings or controls.
Nothing. I'm sure Andy was just a little excited.
So I try to really think about what is the dialogue.
The scream?
No, literally. That was so scary.
I'm not well versed in 3D. Like, I know the software is old, but is it still, how different is it compared to now?
I'm not well versed at 3D animation at all, but I was surprised on how very similar it kind of, at least like the keyframing looked, especially when they pulled out the graph editor. Oh my god, literally my love of my life. I love that thing so much.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's pretty much the same.
Yeah, I was like, this is kind of very similar to kind of what I do, just more intricate. I think nowadays though it's so much more coding heavy from what I've heard. They still do rigging though,
but I feel like not too much has changed actually. A lot of it is like math, which, you know, anyone that can do math can't be really trusted anyways, but whatever.
No, the curves though, they're so fun. You kind of make the curves a little more like for the value system, and it just like makes everything so much more smoother. You know, I don't know, I love the curves. I love it so much. I just feel like it is actually like kind of scary how integral math is into art. If art is purely more of like putting what's out in the world that we see visually onto paper, math is more of the logical explanation of everything that is happening within our entire existence.
Because of like the introduction of specifically like photography, it has like changed how the vast like public views good art and bad art, because now the more realistic it gets, the higher quality we think it is, and the more skilled we think it is, when actually art has a neutral value and there can be no bad or incorrect art. You can approach a specific approach incorrectly, but art can never be wrong.
Thank you guys so much for just stopping by and hanging out, and we hope to see you in the next one.
Today, we're going to be drawing fonts as ATO characters.
Okay, 50 minutes on the clock, and your time starts